Welcome to the Jet Set Hers podcast. I'm Jenny.
And I'm Jamie. We discuss travel, adventure, and everyday life. Listen with us, and let's go somewhere.
Hi.
Yo, Jenny, what's up?
I'm just excited to tell you about my beer today.
Oh, well then let's waste no time.
Let's waste no time.
Share. What is it?
Because it's not an IPA.
Oh, well then you're right. This is some good information. I mean, you're right. This must be good then.
Right. So I know that this episode won't be coming out for a minute, so by the time you hear this, Valentine's Day will be way past. But today is currently Valentine's Day. So I kind of wanted to, go with the theme, So I picked up a raspberry porter.
Ooh.
Yeah, this is not my style, but it was really good. It definitely had, a very raspberry-forward taste, but with that porter feeling in your mouth. And it went down pretty easy.
How was the finish?
It was good. It's, not bitter at all. It wasn't sour because of the raspberry.
And I saw that color. That boy was dark.
But it was really good. I highly recommend. It is from Soulcraft Brewing out of Salida, Colorado.
Keeping it local?
Yeah, I had no idea where that was, but it is very south, a little west of me, about 4 hours, so.
Not super local, but so local to Colorado,
Right.
I guess.
Right. 6%, which I feel like for stout is actually kind of on the lower side, but.
For sure.
I would drink again.
Nice easy drinker. I like easy drinkers, especially when they're like a porter or a stout, so yeah, lucky there.
Yeah. So, happy Valentine's Day in the past for everyone that's listening now. But what are you sipping on?
Okay, so coming out of one of our favorite breweries, me and you had the Fat Orange Cat Brewing, the Teenage Kittens. Do you remember when we had that together?
I remember the can.
Yes, not too long ago. Well, maybe like a year ago. So it's a Fat Orange Cat out of Connecticut. But since we record on Mondays, I had to get something very fitting. It is called I Don't Like Mondays. It's a New England style IPA, of course, 7.5, but it's like this little worker guy at his desk.
He's super creepy.
That's his neck. This is like his shirt, and he's at his desk.
Well, that's his shirt. I thought it was his pants. That's so funny.
His neck is just this big.
Kind of terrifying.
It's actually really creepy and gross, but it is so good.
It's very fitting.
Oh, for some reason, this is the third time I've got a beer by Fat Orange Cat. We have Fat Orange Cat in the fridge, and I'll probably have it on the pod, but it was an ale, a blueberry ale.
Ooh.
Jenny, with peach in it.
Ooh.
When I tell you this was so good, it didn't taste too fruity, Fat Orange Cat, 10 out of 10 every time.
Yeah.
I love my beer store for keeping them in stock, because
that's good to know too, because I love a good blueberry beer, but it can be too much really quick.
I know you can find some Fat Orange Cat out there, so I'll send you the can, the graphic, and maybe you can find it.
Yeah.
We could have a double up. We could cheers it like we're in real time having a beer together.
Well, cheers to our Valentine's Day / I Don't Like Mondays beers.
Clink.
Well, let's just get right to today's interview. We speak to Travis King, who is you'll hear all about it. So we're going to talk about his travels, his book, and about Puerto Escondido, and a little bit about Australia. I feel like there's a lot to mention about.
4 continents in 4 years. Talk about covering some ground, y'all.
Literally.
Some literal ground. Really, really excited to introduce Travis. So let's waste no time again and
enjoy. All right, introducing today's guest. This is Travis, and let's just say a lover of travel as we are, but also an author now and living in Puerto Escondido. So we're going to hear a little bit about all of that. So hi, Travis.
Yeah. Hey, nice to meet you guys. Thanks for having me on to the show. I love talking about all the things you just mentioned. So excited to meet you guys and hang out for a while virtually and chat about writing, travel, Mexico, Puerto, whatever it is you guys want to get into.
All of it. Let's go.
Nice. Yeah.
My dog just came over to say hi to me, so I'll just say that too. If you guys hear barking in the background, it's a cute little dog that we've had for about a year now. Hi, Rue. Hey,
Hi, Rue.
Hey, Lou. What's up, girl?
We are
He's
all
really
about
cute, too.
dogs and cats, animals of all sorts.
There you go. It's my first dog. And I'm very in love with her.
Oh,
She's the best.
yay, that's so
Yeah.
exciting.
Yeah.
So, to start off, tell us about yourself. Let's get to know you first.
Right on. Yeah, like the elevator pitch version sort of is. I'm 38. I grew up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Kind of left there after, for undergrad, I went up to school up in Green Bay. Then I lived in New Orleans, traveled around a bit. I did 2 years of AmeriCorps. If anybody out there is familiar with AmeriCorps, it's kind of like domestic Peace Corps. And then ended up going back to Milwaukee for grad school, and I did 2 years of grad school to get a master's degree in nonprofit management because my whole 20s I was working in like after school centers and different places for sort of disadvantaged youth, I suppose. I finished grad school and I had this weird thought of like I make every decision so far in my life based on my resume and what I think is the next best logical step for my career. When am I ever going to make a decision just for like me and for my life? And with that thought, I bought a one-way flight to South America, and that was 10 years ago.
Wow.
It really changed everything. And like the book that you guys mentioned earlier that I published last year is about those first 4 years of the trip and kind of what happened and like my awakening via travel and like kind of the world holding up a mirror to you to let you know who you are and your place and your potential and all of that. And yeah, so it's chronological retelling of those 4 years, but it's also a whole lot more that I put into the book. When people ask me what the book is about, I'm like, it's these 4 years of my travels in these 20 countries or whatever, but it's also every good thought I've ever had. And like, you know, all of the sort of like armchair life philosophy stuff that I think about and that I thought was worth, you know, like remembering and writing down on my phone as I was going. And then I tried to pack it all into the book or whatever. So now, yeah, I mean, these last 9 years, I basically traveled for the first 4 of this book. And it was like, you know, my shoestring solo backpacking adventures where like I was like volunteering different hostels, like volunteering different organizations around the world and just trying to keep the adventure alive. I lived for a year and a half in Australia before I was forcibly removed from the country because I overstayed my visa and broke the terms of it, and a bunch of hectic stuff happened. But I was basically just like really trying to keep the adventure going, which, you know, at some point becomes like a bank balance survival game. And at some point I didn't know how to make more money. And I ended up applying for travel companies because I was like, now I have all this travel experience. I had the previous, you know, like group leading experience with all the jobs I had with kids and stuff. And then I ended up working for Remote Year, which is one of the first travel companies to cater to digital nomads. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Remote Year, but they're still one of the biggest companies out there to basically organize digital nomads to take them on trips around the world for, you know, it can be, now they do more like week-long and month-long retreats and stuff. But back when I started there, it was like year-long trips. Like if you came on Remote Year, you were committing to like changing your whole life basically and going around the world for a year with, you know, groups of like 50 to 70 people.
Wow.
And I led the third ever program around the world for a year. Then I stayed on as the director of community because that was sort of my niche inside of the company. I was like the guy that kind of came in with the most sort of group leading background and like group dynamic and all that stuff experience. So yeah, I ended up really luckily finding myself in the role of director of community for a few years for Remote Year. Was there up until the pandemic, and we kind of built that community up to like 2,500 people or something that were people that consider themselves, you know, Remote Year part of the community, basically, Remote Year peoples. And it was a really amazing time until it ended, until the pandemic came. And then my partner, Maria, who's in the next room, just chilling, she also worked for Remote Year at the time. She was the operations director for Mexico City because she's from Mexico. And she was also a program leader. She led trips around the world too. But we both got fired the same day, like most of the company, basically. We were 120 some people and then went down to 3 people like over a week because, you know, like the borders shut, and it was just super hectic. Actually, we had like you know, hundreds of people out in the world in different cities on the program. We kind of gave everybody the option to go home. Obviously, things were getting scary in those early days of the pandemic, if you can recall. And so yeah, we basically everybody went home for the most part. Like we were surprised actually how many people were like, yeah, I'm freaked out. Like so, we lost like almost all of our customers overnight, and basically then the whole team got fired overnight too. So it was a really weird time because, you know, for 4 years, that was like my everything was like my schedule, where I was in the world, what I woke up to do in the morning, how I identified myself sort of in the world. I was like Remote Year director of community, and that was all my friends. It was everything. It was my job, you know, it was everything. So it was a big shakeup for me, just like have to try to like redefine what I want to do with my life and figure that all out again. But basically the last year and a half has been awesome. And like, you know, I'm kind of grateful for, you know, I can look back and see it kind of as a silver lining now of like, I was pushed into a new direction. Honestly, I don't know if I would have ever left that job because I was getting paid to travel, and like it was awesome. It was amazing. So with that new push, now I'm my girlfriend and I were in Mexico City for the first like 8 or 9 months of the pandemic, but now it's 2 Octobers ago, we put our little dog in this 25-year-old white truck I bought in Mexico City and drove it down to Puerto Escondido, where we live now. And
Wow.
so yeah, now I'm like kind of intentionally unemployed, and I work on trying to promote my book and I have like a Medium page that I'm kind of committing to more this year. So I've been putting out a blog every week or every 2 weeks. We have 2 different properties that we bought in the area, so we're developing projects on those properties. I run a consultancy about remote work because I got all this experience, in the remote work sector while at Remote Year. So one of the other guys that I worked with at Remote Year, one of my best friends, Jason, and now business partner, we run a little consultancy to try to help companies do remote work better. And we've kind of really leaned into the culture side of things just because that part's hard. If you can't, do like Friday happy hour or like the summer camping trip or whatever it is, like how do you still feel close as a staff? So we do a lot of virtual events to help teams like bond virtually. And then I do a lot of stuff locally. Like later after this call, I'm going to go run around and get all the plastic out of these little like plastic recycling locations that I set up in my neighborhood of La Punta. So I'm trying to help with some of that stuff locally. And then I host events here locally. I run a big open mic night every Thursday, and I play in a little 2-person band 3 or 4 times a week. So yeah, now my life is just like kind of a mishmash of all these different weird things that all make me feel really inspired and that I really love. So it's fun. I get to set my alarm clock for whenever I want every morning, and then when I wake up, I do whatever I want to do, and it feels very like I feel like pretty inspired right now about what the future has in store and like what I'm spending my time on. So yeah, it's good. Life is good,
great,
and I'm
yeah.
It sounds pretty freeing.
Yeah, totally. That's I think the part that feels really magical. It's like I'm not beholden to anybody, and I really want to maintain. That's the thing I think I keep closest to my chest is just that freedom of not having to answer to anybody else and not working for anybody else. And like I said, I kind of was super keenly aware. I was kind of super keenly aware when when Remote Year shut down because of the pandemic and stuff, that I would never find a job that I loved as much as that job, or a company that I was that stoked to be working for and an important part of. And then I just kind of committed in my mind of like, okay, well then just like figure it out for yourself and be like more entrepreneurial and don't work for anybody else. So that's kind of what I've been focused on for the last 1.5 years and trying to figure out how to make that work. And then ultimately in the next couple of years, my partner and I hope to open a business here in La Punta, like a little co-working, co-living to cater to that digital nomad community that we're pretty close with out there. And, then I'll run a little community space here in Puerto Escondido that hopefully I can retire on or run as long as it's fun for me and Maria. And then, write my next book somewhere in paradise, basically.
I feel like that is a pretty big cultural shock, going from like go around the world to you can't leave your house.
Yeah.
It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, it's been weird, and like that's kind of like I gave you guys just the long-winded version, but that's kind of the simple thing that I always think about now when people are like, how are you doing? What's life like in Puerto? It's like, I tried to make the best I could of like continually moving for 9 years, like just traveling. Like I don't think I stayed anywhere for more than a few months outside of living in Byron Bay in Australia for like 6 months and maybe a year total in the end. Like now I say like I'm just trying to make the best of staying. Like I try to make the best of traveling, and it was amazing, and I had like a life-changing experience for those nearly 10 years. And now I'm like really kind of trying to commit mentally to like I think I'm going to be here for at least 10 years, maybe even more. Like I think Puerto feels more like home to me than really any place I've had in my adult life, at least. I just want to be like a good part of the community, and I want to be here, and I want to help it grow into something beautiful, because I think it's kind of inevitable that it's going to grow. People are finding out about Puerto all the time, and there's this constant conversation in town here of like it becoming the next Tulum, and what does that mean, and oh no, and how do we make it not shitty? I basically just want to be here to like kind of do what I can to like help and organize things like in a positive way for the people here, and be respectful of the nature and the locals and the history and all that too. And yeah, it's a cool place to decide to put your flag in the ground and to commit to, and I'm very happy to call it home for hopefully at least 10 years or more, and make the best of staying basically. Yeah, so it's exciting. It's like it's all still like it's not super clear, right? So it's going to be fun to see how things unfold and how the dust settles, so to say.
I feel like unclear is always a good thing though, because like you would have never known you would have ended up where you did and met your partner and
exactly. It all feels pretty meant to be so far. So I'm just trying to ride the positivity and that sense of like just going with what feels right and chasing that feeling that when I feel inspired and when I feel excited about something, and just trying to lean into that.
So you did talk quite a bit about your book in your intro, but is there anything else you wanted to like focus on or let everyone know about?
Yeah, like we get to talk about writing in general, or just like, I don't know how much, if you guys are writers or readers, or where you fall in the whole world of the literature out there. But yeah, I've been like an avid reader for, my whole kind of. I actually feel like I was one of those people like faked it through high school and undergrad. Like I just like pretended to read every book I was supposed to write a thing about. I just would like read like a synopsis online and then try to make it up. And I was
Notes.
Yeah, exactly. I was thankfully like smart enough and good enough at writing that I could get away with sort of like faking it. But then actually I'll shout out Dave Eggers. He's one of my favorite authors. I read his memoir, which is called The Heartbreaking Work of Staggering Genius, the summer after I finished undergrad. And I remember it was just like the first book in my adult life that I was like, holy fuck, like good writing is magical. And like it really like transported me to some place like that I didn't know books could take you. And we had a lot in common. Like he lost both his parents. I lost my mom at a young age. And my brother and I are very close. And in that book, he's sort of like raising his younger brother as like part of the story of the memoir or whatever. So that book really like turned me back onto how magical books can be in storytelling in general. And so, yeah, I've been a pretty avid reader ever since then. And I like, the first thing I do every morning still is read. And the last thing I do every night is read. And so I'm very into, especially like memoirs. I've been reading a lot of memoirs lately. It's part of like, I guess like I love memoirs enough that I wrote my own in the end. And yeah, like the whole process and everything around like, not being like, there's such a, gap between somebody like me who just put a book out into the world, like self-published on Amazon and figured all of it out for himself. And like people that have, book agents or, the Stephen Kings out there. But there's a lot of people, like the world is now more open. It's like the same thing with music. You can create your own music and put it online. And if it's good, people will be like, yo, this is good. And hopefully you can kind of like take, the reins of your own career in those like more creative pursuits of writing or music or whatever else it might be. So it's an interesting time to try to be in that world. Yeah, the whole process and everything about it was interesting. And yeah, as somebody that like, isn't a famous author yet, it is like you go through so many feelings of like the what's that called, like imposter syndrome or whatever, of like, as I was working, I was like, am I really a writer? Like, does anybody give a shit about this? Is this any good or whatever? And like, and it also starts with like one sentence. Like you open a blank page and you like write down a sentence. You're like, this is going to be a book. Yeah, right. Or whatever. It's like, I still remember that day that like I started it. It was a huge journey in itself as well.
Do you have any crazy travel stories you want to share with us?
Oh, do I ever? Yeah. I mean, like read the book if you're interested, or just first Google the book. Like it's on Amazon. It's a real thing. So you can go ahead and read some reviews that have already been left for it and check it out for yourself and see if it sparks something. All the crazy travel stories are in there. Obviously there's a few like highlights. One that, I'm not sure who your audience is out there, but one of the ones, and I already mentioned, like I told every true story about sex and drugs and all the adult things that we all do, but then somehow feel like are too taboo to actually talk about in a real way. But one of the trips through my first country, actually, of this whole long 4-year book was in Colombia. And somewhere along the way, we met a guy that told us about this tour where you can like actually make your own cocaine with one of Pablo Escobar's former scientists. So we like went to the small town of Colombia, stood around in like the main square for a while until we like saw this guy that the dude had mentioned. Like he's like, he looks like this. He's a short guy with a baseball cap on. His name's Umberto, whatever. And we found this dude in the park and negotiated a thing. And then like me and 3 friends that I'd made on the travels went to do this little tour at this guy's house where we like turned coca leaves into cocaine. It was a very insane experience and just like a really wild travel story. And just like, I don't know, like I didn't expect that to be a thing that was even possible. Like I know like Colombia and cocaine have a long history together, but like I didn't think there'd be a chance for me to like make it.
Right.
I feel like, and that's a story that not very many people can say.
I don't know if you guys are divers or there's any divers out there listening, but I did my dive master on Utila, which is a little island off the coast of Honduras. And it's kind of a famous island for people going to do diving to stay for a while to do their dive masters or whatever. The whole island is basically just like people partying and diving every day. It's a really magical little place in the world. And I ended up staying to do my dive master. So I was there for 5 or 6 months. And towards the end, on a staff dive, there's one shipwreck in Utila. It's called the Halliburton. It's a very famous shipwreck because it's the one major shipwreck there. And it's really deep as well. So it's like a deep dive. And we went out at night as a staff. So we did like a deep dive at night just with the staff. And a shipwreck dive, like it was everything a dive can be. Basically, it was wild. And on the way out, I'd always joked that I was going to take a poop on the Halliburton because there's a big toilet right at the front of the boat, and it's just like somebody put like a classic toilet right on the very tip of this boat or whatever. You see it like right when you're going down to the boat, you like see like, why is there a toilet there? So I used to always joke like I'm gonna poop on the Halliburton someday. And then that night on the staff night, we were like going out in the boat, and somebody on the team was like, "Hey man, like there's no customers around. You can like actually poop this time if you want." And I was like, I do kind of have to poop. So I pooped on a sunken ship 30 meters below sea to the amusement of my entire dive team. And like, you know, they were all like GoPros running, like filming it and like cracking up underwater. And, you know, like when you get close with a group of friends, you end up being just super weird around each other. So we were like, you know, just like naked underwater, like being so goofy together. And yeah, and then after I took the poop board, got out on the island, I had like my little 15 minutes of fame on Utila for being the first person to ever poop on the Halliburton. And yeah, maybe there's a statue for me there now. I don't know. Me just pooping on a toilet.
You should literally have like a golden throne.
Right.
Yeah. So that was a wild story. I don't know, getting kicked out of Australia, like I mentioned earlier, that was very hectic and scary when it went down. And then I spent like the book that I wrote is broken up into continents. So, and that was like something that I just got so lucky with. Like I wrote the first draft and then kind of like checked where the continent breaks were. And it was almost like equal quarters. And I was like, wow, this book just like organized itself as though I had planned it when I did not plan it. And so the first bit is South America. The next continent is North America, which includes like that time in Utila doing my dive master. It includes Alaska and Hawaii and some other really interesting places that are in like the North American region. And then the third continent is Australia, and I stayed there for about a year and a half, and like, you know, was on a work visa, so I was able to make some money when I was there. And eventually, though, I got forcibly removed from the country, and then I ended up in Asia and spent months there before I finally got this job at Remote Year. And so the end of the book is a lot of countries in Asia, and there's a lot of crazy stories in that part of the book too. But I'll let you go and grab a copy and read them for yourself.
I mean, those sample ones I feel like should catch anyone's attention. So.
Oh yeah, those teasers were good. So.
Yeah.
They're real things that happened, and they're, you know, at the time it's not like I knew I was going to write a book about them or anything. But then, like, you know, when you travel long enough, like that's kind of part of where the inspiration from writing the book came from. Like people be like, "Oh, you've been to so many countries, you've been, you know, on this adventure for so long now. Like, when are you going to write your book about it?" And honestly, I think most of the times anybody said that, it was just like kind of a clever compliment to give. But I started taking it seriously. Like by the 10th time I heard that compliment or whatever, I was
fine.
like, when am I going to write my book? I guess I will. Which is part of where the joke of the title comes from. Like, not that anyone asked, because like, you know, it's not like somebody paid me like in advance to write this book, right? Like, and it's not like anybody even really asked me to go into this much detail about like what happened and what it meant to me and how it changed me and like how I kind of evolved and grew through the travels. Wanted to explain it because of how much it meant to me. So yeah, it's kind of where the name for the book came from too.
And talk about twist endings. The beginning to that sunken ship story, I would have never guessed where it was going to end. So
yeah, it's a wild ride.
Let's switch gears here a little bit and focus on Puerto Escondido. So you said you started in Mexico City. Is that what you said?
Yeah, so that's where my partner was based for her role at Remote Year. She was the operations director for the company in Mexico City because that was one of our hubs, sort of our South America, Latin America region. And that year, you know, like my plan was sort of like be in Mexico City some of the times, like when I'm with Maria and like kind of treat it as home base. But then I knew I was going to be like traveling all over for Remote Year. We were planning something in Banff. We were planning like an island takeover in Estonia. We were planning this cool house in the middle of Africa that I was going to go run. So I was going to like just do all these crazy travel experiences with Remote Year, but then always return to Mexico City. So that's where we were when like, you know, the pandemic hit. And I actually remember we were on our way back from Sayulita. We had just been to Sayulita like on a little kind of side trip to explore and see some part of Mexico together. And in the airport on the way back, that's like when they canceled that first NBA game because of the coronavirus. And I was like, huh. And I just like remember being in an airport lounge being like, I think this is the last time I'll be in an airport lounge for a while. And I just kind of like felt like this seems so serious. Like they're canceling NBA games. Like what is happening, you know?
Yeah.
And then, so then that was where then we just ended up back in Mexico City, kind of dealt with the harshest part of the pandemic together there, which was really actually kind of a nice place to be. We had a park down the street from us that I could go still work out at, and I kind of like get outside a little bit. I rode my bike a lot. I had finished the first draft of the book, but I hadn't like finished the editing process and all the other things that go into getting a book finally actually published, like the interior layout, the cover design, the editing, like all of it. There's so much other stuff that has to happen with the book. And thankfully it was in like that perfect place where like I could really just like put my head down and try to finish it. And I think I reread the book like 15 times to try to make sure that every sentence was perfect, you know? And we focused on that stuff, and then kind of always knew though all along that we wanted to relocate to Puerto. And I had, I was 37, I think, when we moved down here, and I had a little money saved up from years of work, and I wanted to like take it all out and buy a piece of land and just, like take this moonshot and like buy a piece of land, turn it into business, and then like retire on it. And so that's kind of what we did. And I bought an old truck with an envelope full of cash, and we put our dog and all our stuff in the truck and drove down to Puerto. And that's like one of these weekends that like, I don't know, like as it was happening, even it felt like I was in a Wes Anderson movie or something. It was just like so weird. Like our CD player in the truck, like the radio doesn't work and the aux cord doesn't work. So like we had to listen to CDs. We had like these 10 old CDs from the 90s. The truck broke down every 2 hours. Rue was like a little puppy with like, she had scabies in her ears. So like her ears had no hair on them. And we were just like a mess, but we were just like chasing our dreams, and it was really like, let's go. Let's just figure out how to get this dog and all of our shit to the beach, and like, let's figure it out, and we did. And now it's like so fun to think back about like, yeah, like just being like brave and making that choice and going for it. And now we're here, and now we're both, like super involved in a lot of stuff in Puerto and the community, and have a lot of friends, and it feels like I said, it feels more like home than any place I've had in my adult life. And even if we go somewhere for a week or something, when I come back to like this little apartment that I'm talking to you guys from right now, it just feels like, oh man, I fucking love this little place. I love this town. I love the street I'm on. I love my little apartment. I love my dog, even though she's being bad right now. But yeah, it's a good place to have ended up, and I feel really grateful to be here. And it's also a really interesting time to kind of have come here, because it was starting to sort of like grow. And obviously, there's people that have been here longer, more expertise. But just from my perspective, it was like kind of starting to catch like the attention of the world, and a little more like it was a little more in the travelers' conversations that were being had out there. But it's even like, I think since we've been here, like that pace and that like awareness of Puerto and people coming here and it changing and growing, and the development and all that stuff has been like rapid. Like it's even from like my little balcony here. I'm on the main street in La Punta, this neighborhood that I really love. There's like 6 new restaurants that I can see that have opened from my balcony in the last year. Like it's crazy how much. And like if I look out now, there's like a ton, like right across the street, there's construction happening right now. There's just so much stuff, like you feel it evolving. And then like the piece of land we bought, like the guy that helped us broker that deal, I saw him like 6 months after we bought it. And he was like, hey man, you should feel really good about like just going for it and pulling the trigger on that. I was like, what do you mean? He's like, I'm pretty sure you could sell it for twice what you bought it for right now. Like, and like, that's how like the housing market and the price of land and stuff has been just like exponential curve. So it just is, it's like this really interesting time to be here to see it like swelling and growing, and like how, I don't know, like what's going to happen, and kind of just to be in it as it's happening, and to try to hopefully make a positive impact too. Like I mentioned, I'm trying to do this plastic recycling program and some other little things to, I don't know, to be a positive part of the changes. Yeah, I find myself like always like, there's always all these WhatsApp chats, for example, in Puerto. It's kind of how a lot of things are communicated. And there's like always like every couple of weeks, like super like frustrated, like writing a long message to 250 people about how like they don't like Puerto, like how things are changing, the prices going up and blah, blah, blah. And my reaction is I was just like, okay, I get it, but like, I don't know, don't just like send an angry text that bums 250 people out. Like do something. Like you're just like venting, or I don't know, like it's not like proactive. It's not helpful. It was like a day where one of those texts came through and I was like, oh man, this is like so frustrating. Just that people are just like, like pitchforks and torches vibes, but just like in texts, like no action. And so I was like, well, why don't we actually like do something? So we tried to hold like a number of like community meetings to get people's input on what things we could do, and who's actually committed to trying to help make positive changes and stuff like that. And from all that, we've had like a lot of people's help, and even like the local delegado here in La Punta has been a part of our project, and some of the local people in La Punta that are really caring, and a lot of the business owners in La Punta that are really caring. And now we've launched this like plastic recycling program to hopefully help with some of the, like, one issue related to the growth of just like there's so much waste now. And yeah, it's very interesting kind of to be right in the heart of a tourist place that's like on the verge of just like really blowing up, and having like the airport's about to become an international airport. There's a highway that they're finishing. It's like the super highway from Oaxaca City down to the coast here. So really it's like, yeah, there's just this feeling of like it's growing. And yeah, like seeing kind of how it plays out and how we can be a positive part of it is going to be an interesting, I think, thing for us for the next handful of years.
What do you think is bringing everyone down, and what made you go? Is it like really nice beaches? Is that like a a big thing?
It's a lot, and I think there's a lot of reasons, right? Like there's beautiful beaches, beautiful food. Oaxaca's like famous for so many like culinary and food related reasons. Like the mezcal is incredible. Like I don't know, like the party vibe here is really pretty fun. Amazing surfing. There's amazing nature. There's amazing like local culture and traditions, and so many cool things about Oaxaca. Like I'm just like Mexico's a huge place. It's one thing I've like come to really realize more and more and more since I've been living here and spending time here. Like there's a ton of different states, and like I've only maybe been to less than half, like a third maybe. But I know I just really love Oaxaca as like a state. It's an incredible place, and there's just so much like diversity in Oaxaca itself. And then this part of the coast specifically is just really like an incredible place, and it has this like it still feels like very like natural and organic, and like not pretentious and not put on yet. And I think that's what people are worried about, is that like it will start to become a little more like pretentious, or a little more like Tulum or Playa del Carmen or some of the places that I think feel overdeveloped now, and that feel like, like one thing I would say about like Puerto is it's still like it's where Mexicans go to have fun in Mexico still. And I don't think there's that many Mexicans like taking a vacation to Tulum. I feel like it's mostly like New York TikTok and Instagram kids coming down to get like their cool pictures in their robe and big fucking hat with feathers in it, and then they go back to New York or whatever. And I think that's people's fear about like Puerto is going to maybe evolve and become this kind of more like pretentious place. Like Kanye West just came to Puerto like 3 months ago or something, and I saw a picture of him like at our little airport at our little luggage claim. I'm like, that's so funny that like Kanye West was over there.
Right.
Wow.
It's got this feeling now of like people are discovering it. I think it's like because people want to go be a part of something before it like changes and becomes shitty, which I still am holding out hope that it won't. But like there is this really feeling of like you're somewhere like authentic, and like I think one thing I really love about like La Punta and like my little neighborhoods, like you walk around and there's still like lots that are just like a bunch of goats tied up or like a bunch of chickens, and then like the next lot is like a new sushi restaurant. You're like, this is so interesting. It's just like it's such a weird like mix of old and new and local and foreign, and like
together.
it's just like this huge melting pot that has like a ton of amazing energy. And specifically in La Punta too, like one thing I really love about it is it has this like street level connectedness where like if I sit on my porch and have a beer, before I finish the beer I'll say hi to like 10 people or more, because everybody in this little neighborhood specifically really like kind of knows each other after being here for a little while. And that's how I felt in Byron Bay, this little place in Australia that I really fell in love with and I really loved being. And that's like kind of like I never could quite explain to people why I loved Byron Bay, and then I finally was able to sort of put words to it when I was thinking a lot about it and writing that part of my book. But it's really this feeling of like you go to the grocery store and you say hi to 5 people on the way, and you come back from the grocery store and you say hi to 5 different people, and you just have this sense of like we all know each other, we all kind of care about each other. And that is really true in La Punta as well. And I think it's part of why I fell in love with it, like also along with all these other things that I've listed. But just that sense of like you're somewhere that's like really interesting and cool and fascinating and makes you feel super alive, and you're also like a part of it. You're not just like looking at it. Like, I feel like you're like in it. You're like you matter, and you can have an impact. You can like do it. Like if you have an idea, you can do it, and everybody will be like, go for it, or like we support you. Like this open mic night that I think I mentioned earlier, like it started as like an idea I had. Now like 200 people come to open mic every Thursday, and like 25 or 30 musicians sign up on the list, and it's like the biggest event in Puerto. And I'm like, that's crazy. Like this was just like something I thought of like a year ago. Like there should be an open mic night in Puerto, because I'm a guitar player myself, and I always try to play open mics when I'm traveling. And I just was like, it's weird there's not one in Puerto. Let me try to start one. And now it's like this massive community thing. Yeah, it's crazy. So like I don't know. It's like La Punta and Puerto have this feeling of just like your dreams are possible, and you look around and like you see everybody just chasing their dreams. Like it looks like construction to a lot of other people, but to me, I'm like, no, that's somebody chasing their dream. They're like building a restaurant, and they like want to like make a positive impact in this cool neighborhood that they love. And yeah, so it's just a really exciting place to be. I never thought. I always say this too. Like I traveled for 9 years. I saw so many beautiful places, and like I always just assumed that like whenever I stopped traveling and decided to put my flag in the ground and maybe build a hostel or build something, that like I wouldn't be sure it was the right place. I would always have this feeling of like, I don't know, the world is cool, the world is huge, there's a lot of cool stuff out there. This is great, but I'm not sure. And it's so weird now to reflect after being here for like a year that like I'm like sure that Puerto was where I was meant to end up, and I'm sure that like La Punta and this neighborhood like are meant for me, and I'm meant for it. And I just feel really grateful that I'm able to feel very sure in like the decisions that Marie and I have made, and moving here and like setting up camp here for a long time. So yeah, it's exciting.
So it's obviously still very, very like up and coming and growing. But if someone were to be planning a trip like next week, what would you say are like some must-dos? Like, you got to check this out.
Yeah, so I just had a bunch of friends come and I wrote them a couple things about that. One is like, there's like amazing food, so like try all the food, try all the mezcal, come to open mic night, go check out live music. There's also a bunch of great nature stuff to do. There's a group called the Hikers of Puerto Escondido that sometimes I help lead hikes with. That's run by this guy named Dave, who I'm friends with. So there's like cool hikes you can do around the area.
I love that.
With that group. The one other main thing is like there's dolphins out in front of Puerto, and during whale season there's whales too. And there's also like massive game fish. So like, like marlin and bellas. That's what they're called here. I think they're called something else. And sailfish, I think.
Yeah.
Mahis. I don't know, like these big, crazy dorados, I think is what they're called here, but I think that's the same. Trying to learn 2 words for everything is hard. I'm still working on my Spanish. But yeah, so like I always tell people to go on actually a fishing trip because you're almost for sure going to see dolphins anyway, because there's a lot, you can sign up to do like a dolphin tour, right? Where you're just going out to see dolphins, but the captain's not trying to catch anything. So I always tell people like, go like with the captain's going to put some lines in the water. You're going to see dolphins anyway. You're probably going to see whales if it's whale season anyway. And then like there's a chance that 2 hours into the trip, it's like the most exciting 10 minutes of your life and you have like a 200-pound fish on a line and you're like, ah. So we got to have that experience like maybe 5-6 months ago, but I caught like, I don't know, this massive sailfish as tall as me. It was the craziest time I've ever had on a boat, and I spent a lot of time on a boat. And it was wild. So that's a really fun thing to do, is just going out on a fishing trip. I mean, and whether you catch a fish or not, it's amazing nature. You'll see dolphins. You'll see hundreds of dolphins. It's like totally insanely cool nature. And then there's a chance you catch the biggest fish of your life, and something to tell your grandkids about someday. So that's a must do, I think. And then the other thing is like One Direction. You have a little paradise called Chikawa, and actually my girlfriend and I, we just got back. We were celebrating our 3rd anniversary there. We just got back yesterday. We were there for a couple nights, and Chikawa is this amazing place, incredible surf, incredible, like it's got an Afro-Mexican community there, so like the culture and the community is all very like unique and very like really, I don't know, it's cool. And it's like so hard to get to this lagoon, like it's like a boat, so it's kind of like it's evolving and it's changing slower than pretty much everywhere else in the world. So it's just got this really amazing sort of like like the mosquito trapped in amber feeling to the community and to the place. But it's gorgeous and it's insanely fun to go out there. So that's like a cool trip to go in that direction. And then the other way is Mazunte, which is Mazunte and Zipolite and a bunch of small little beach communities that are super like bohemian and hippie and really interesting and fun to go check out. And then there's a whole bunch of different little towns on the way there, which is where we have land in El Puertecito and some of the other places I mentioned. But it's like Plataforma, Tierra Blanca, El Puertecito, Aguas Blancas, like all these little towns that are super cool to go check out on a scooter. You can go surfing in pretty much all of those. You can go get, oysters as big as your face in all those little towns. There's like little shacks on the beach to have lunch. And it's just cool. It's like, I think the Oaxacan coast is magical from start to finish. The whole way along the coast here in Oaxaca is pretty cool. And it's, so like there's places like Puerto that feel like they're kind of blowing up, but you can go like 20 minutes down the carretera and you can find a little town where there's like 40 people living and like no restaurants or one restaurant, or like that feeling of it's just like still like so nature and so like also kind of trapped in time. Like this hasn't changed much since like the 1970s or whatever. And so I don't know, Oaxaca and this whole region is just so fun to explore and catching the vibes. And it's a pretty special place just to like not have much expectation for the day, just like see what kind of unfolds for yourself.
Live like a local.
Yeah. Like I used to actually always say that too about Byron, like the place I compared here earlier. Like people would always show up. Like I lived at a hostel for a year when I was in Byron, and I ran all the events for the hostel and stuff. And when people would show up, they'd be like, "What do I do?" And I'd be like, "I don't know. Like go to the lighthouse. There's a famous lighthouse in Byron Bay, and it's like a nice little like 2-hour hike where you can walk up to the lighthouse. Like I don't know, go to the lighthouse. Like check out the dolphins because there's also dolphins in Byron. Maybe go surfing, but like." I don't know, also stop asking yourself so much about what you should do. Like just be here. Like that's the magic of Byron, is like just living there and like just like enjoying it. Yeah, and it's like every other person would get it. And like the people that didn't get it, I was like, maybe Byron's not for you, and like, like carry on then. Go somewhere else. Go to Sydney or something where they're like you need to go to like a museum every day or something, like go to a bigger city. And same thing with Puerto. Like when people are like, what do I do here? I'm like, I don't know, there's those things I just mentioned, but also just be here. And like if you love it, like you'll know. And like then you won't wake up being like, what do I do today? You'll just be in Puerto and like let the day happen to you, sort of thing. And it's a really great place for that.
Before we start wrapping it up, really quick, the food. What is like your favorite thing to eat?
Oof. So, oh man, there's so much good stuff. There's like a type of restaurant here that I really love where it's like they basically It's like sashimi and tarritas, which are like a way to prepare fish without really cooking it. You're cooking it like it's kind of like a ceviche style thing where you're cooking it like in soy. Like there's a couple really. There's a place called Bar La Morena that has food that way. La Cevicheria here in La Punta that has food that way. There's this really famous place in Centro. It's kind of, I think, getting more famous called El Bunker de JP. And that place I find really magical because it's almost like a speakeasy fish restaurant. Like you walk past this little like mechanics and they'll be like working on cars and there's like this one little entrance and then you get inside and it's this like sand floor bottom place that just serves huge plates of sashimi and huge, like micheladas, which is like a way to drink beer in Mexico where you add a bunch of shit to it. And it's incredible. Yeah. So like those types of restaurants I find just so charming and cool. And, it's like fresh fish. You can like smell the ocean from where you are and you're eating like super fresh fish prepared in this really interesting and this very like Oaxacan style way. So that's really good. And then, I don't know, there's like just tons of fish tacos. There's a type of fish taco that's kind of famous here in Puerto where it's deep fried in a batter that has coconut in it. So like fried coconut shrimp tacos are like a delicacy that I tried not to spend money on it every day, but maybe every other day I'll go get some. But there's a place down the street here called Fish Shack that's become super famous, and like you go in the evening to Fish Shack, and it's like always a half an hour wait, but people will wait because the tacos are so good. There's another place called La Olita that's close by that also kind of has similar, just like amazing shrimp tacos. And yeah, I don't know, the fresh seafood I think is the main thing. But
well, before we say goodbye, because obviously you still have your love for travel, even though you are based now, you have a station. What's your like big bucket list destination that you haven't been to yet?
I've got a couple. Really, the first thing that comes to mind with that is like Antarctica, just because it would be then I'd have been to all the continents, and I feel like it's like something that I would like to feel in my head. Like I've been to all the continents, that's cool. But also, I don't know. There's so much. I was looking at a map today, and I haven't done like Nepal. There's parts of India. Like I got to spend 2 weeks in India, but I would love to go back to see sort of the eastern part of India and Nepal and that part of the world. But like the closest one that I think we'll do next actually is Cuba, because I've still never made it to Cuba, but I'm very curious about what's going on over in Cuba. Cuba is really interesting to me. Iceland, I've still never been. I want to go to Iceland. Yeah, I don't know. There's still, the world is so big, and the more you see, the more you realize how much you haven't seen. I've gotten to spend some time in Africa, but there's so much more of Africa that I would like to go check out. Kazakhstan and those stands up there interested me. I want to go up there sometime. Yeah, I don't know. So a lot. There's a lot of places I still want to get to.
I feel like it's like us because we want to go everywhere, and you've already been a lot, but you still need to go everywhere you haven't been yet.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for talking to us today. Before you head out, do you want to tell everyone how they can find you, like your website, and then just say the name of the book again?
Yeah, thanks. Perfect. I have a website I set up mainly just for my book, but it's just traviswking.com. But it has like all the other podcasts I've been on for the most part. You can find my blogs. I just wrote a blog a few weeks ago called 8 Ways to Say I'm American Without Saying I'm American While Traveling. And it kind of went viral. So like now like a couple thousand people have read it. And so if you want to check that out, I think people who are American are like, oh shit, I do this. And that's why it's interesting to them. And the people that aren't American are like, damn, like dunk on those Americans, get up. So like for some reason that article like caught fire and went all over the internet. So you can check out that and all my other posts on my Medium through my website. And then obviously there's links to my book. And yeah, the book is called Not That Anyone Asked, a travel memoir about sex, drugs, love, and finding purpose. You can just Google Not That Anyone Asked travel memoir and it'll show up. And yeah, it's all self-published via the world that Jeff Bezos built on Amazon. So I kind of feel bummed that every time somebody buys a book, he gets to paint part of his rocket or whatever. But I don't know. They built the infrastructure for self-published authors, and that's like the only way to really do it if you want your book to be able to go all over the world and meet people everywhere. So yeah, the book's on Amazon. That's where you can find it. You can get the ebook. There's a paperback, and then there's also a hard copy now that I put out about a month ago. So you can get it in all 3 forms if you want. And if you're like, I only listen to books, I'm working on that. So hopefully by the end of this year, I'll have like the audio version of the book done too.
With that mic you're talking on.
Yeah, that's why I got this mic. But it's also great for chatting to you guys or doing other podcasts too.
Well, thank you so much. This was so much fun, and we'll keep an eye out for everything you're putting out.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, guys. And you can also catch me on Instagram. I'm just Travis King Travels. If you're listening to this and you want to connect with me virtually, that might be the easiest, like low pressure way to find me and keep up with what I'm working on.
Yeah, and we'll link that on ours too.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. I'm excited to check out more of your episodes and hear some more of the conversations you guys have been having with people too. So
thanks. Bye, Travis.
Ciao, guys.
thank you again to Travis so much. We learned a lot, and can't wait to check out that book and find out more of those stories, because those were some really great little samples.
The samples are not going to be enough. We're going to have to pick up the book, so.
And we will link all of his stuff on our socials, which you know you can find us at.
Jet Set Hers Pod.
And send us an email, say hi, give us some crazy travel stories, anything. Send us an email at
jetsethers@gmail.com.
And because you know you love us, go on, give us that 5-star rate, give us that good review.
You know what to do. Thanks for listening, y'all. See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.